This happened just a few weeks ago. I was 36 and needed a paycheck after losing my factory job. The night security position at the abandoned warehouse seemed easy enough. I thought I could sit alone, keep things safe, and think about my next move. Every night I arrived at 10. The roads were quiet, just me and my car. The warehouse stood tall and eerie, its broken windows gaping like soulless eyes. I set up my little security station at the entrance, a folding chair and my flashlight. It was dark. I just needed to stay awake. On my third night, around 1 in the morning, I heard something. It started as a faint thump echoing in the distance. My first thought was an animal, or maybe just the wind. Still, there was a feeling creeping up my spine. I felt like I wasn't alone. The noise continued. It sounded like footsteps. I stood up, scanning the dark corners. A chill ran down my back. I waited, hardly breathing. I didn't see anything, so I brushed it off. Maybe I was just jumpy. Sitting in a dark warehouse can play tricks on you. As the nights went by, I noticed odd things. One night I found strange scratches on the walls. They were not there before. Another time, the tools I left in one room ended up in another. I thought about telling my boss, but would it matter? I didn't want to seem paranoid. The thumping grew louder too. Sometimes I could hear whispers. They were faint, but they chilled me to the bone. It felt like eyes were always watching me from those shadows. I tried to convince myself it was just in my head, but I couldn't shake it. My heart raced every time I heard a rustle or felt a cold draft. I kept the flashlight on, sweeping it across the dark. What would I see? A person? Something else? I could never tell. The last night was the worst. The thumping turned into pounding. The whispers got frantic. I turned to face the sound, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I saw it, a shadow darting across the wall. Was it a trick of the light? I called out, my throat dry. But there was no response. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just a job, I was in something deep. The fear was suffocating. I took a step back, then I felt it. Something close behind me. I spun around, breath shallow, but there was nothing there. I knew deep down I wasn't alone. What I experienced in that warehouse haunts me still. I can't shake the feeling that something followed me. Every time I close my eyes, I can feel those shadows. I wish I'd never taken that job. I shouldn't have ignored my instincts. I still don't know who or what was chasing me. The next night I was back at the warehouse. I had a terrible itch in my stomach, but I needed the money. As I parked my car, I hesitated. The place loomed over me like a giant waiting to swallow me whole. Could I handle another night of this? I took a deep breath and steeled myself. Settling into my chair, I turned the flashlight on. The warm beam cut through the darkness, but it did little to calm my nerves. The silence felt alive, almost mocking me. I scanned the area and let out a small sigh. Nothing had changed. The hours crawled by slowly. I tried to distract myself by checking my phone. But then I heard it again, the thumping. I froze, heart racing. It started as a low rhythm, then built up. This time it felt different, more urgent. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't. Tentatively, I rose from my chair again. The sound came from the far end of the warehouse, dull and insistent. I pointed the flashlight ahead, muscles tense. The beam landed on the wall where I had seen those scratches before, and I felt a sick knot in my stomach. They looked fresher, deeper. That's when I noticed it. A door. I had never seen it before. Half hidden behind some old crates, the door was slightly ajar. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Had it always been there? I couldn't remember. For a moment I debated whether to investigate. My mind flashed back to the shadows, the whispers. I considered leaving, just walking out and never looking back, but I didn't. Curiosity gnawed at me. What was inside? I moved closer, flashlight trembling in my hand. The thumping pulsed, matching the anxiety in my chest. I pushed the door open. It creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside was darkness so thick it swallowed my light. I stepped inside, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The air felt cold. I pointed my flashlight around. Old machinery cluttered the space, rusted and forgotten. My eyes focused on the floor, where something shone faintly. I knelt, heart racing. As the beam revealed more, I realized it wasn't just metal glinting. It was something else, something tangled and sticky. I reached out, brushing my fingers against it. The sensation felt wrong, like touching ice. That's when I saw it, a symbol etched into the ground. It looked ancient, almost tribal. Fear coursed through me. It felt like a warning. I wanted to back away, but I couldn't move. The pounding sound started again, louder this time. It was no longer just a thump. It was a beating. I turned sharply, but the doorway faded into shadow. I was trapped. Panic welled up inside as the whispers surged, demanding my attention. "Get out," they seemed to say. But where? Then everything went dark. I blinked hard, trying to find my bearings. My flashlight flickered back to life, illuminating the space in a weak glow. I looked around, heart pounding. The door had vanished, replaced by a solid wall of darkness. My breath caught in my throat. I was completely alone, and the thumping had stopped. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing in the stillness. Silence greeted me. I felt foolish, the kind of fool who calls out for anyone at the wrong moment. I took a step back, scanning for a way out. My fingers brushed against the cold, sticky substance on the floor. I turned pale as I realized I didn't want to know what it was. I slowly moved to the left, away from the symbol. The air was thick and stale, almost suffocating. As I inched deeper into the room, I stumbled on something hard. I bent down, aiming the flashlight to inspect what I had tripped over. My heart sank when I recognized the broken shards, shattered glass from an old light bulb. Inching forward, I noticed more debris littering the ground. Papers, crumpled and yellowed with age, caught my eye. I swept them aside, hoping for some clue or detail that would explain what this place was. But the more I looked, the more disheartened I felt. They were just old invoices and shipping labels, seemingly mundane. But then one document slipped from my hands and fell open. I could barely make out the name in the top left corner. Mason Industries. A shiver ran down my spine. I knew that name. They had a bad history. Rumors of illegal operations, something about sacrifices and dark rituals whispered among the locals. I felt sick. I clutched the flashlight tightly, remembering the warnings. Panic started crawling back up my throat. Just as I turned to leave, I heard it again, the thumping. Now it was even more pronounced, resonating through walls, deep and relentless. I recoiled, the flashlight beam shaking wildly. "Run," I thought, the word echoing in my mind. As the thumping intensified, it morphed into a cacophony of beats. My instincts screamed at me to escape, yet part of me remained frozen, riveted to the horrifying sound coming from just beyond my light. Suddenly I spotted a faint outline at the opposite wall. My heart raced as I stumbled toward it, hoping it was a way out. As I got closer, I realized it was another door, wider than the one before, but old and rusted like everything else in here. I gripped the handle, ready to pull it open, but looked back one last time. The symbol on the floor seemed to shimmer in the darkness. It felt like it was alive, pulsating, as if responding to the thumping. I could almost hear it calling to me. A swift rush of terror propelled me to the door. I opened it, heart thundering, but the sight beyond froze me in place. I stepped through, and I was no longer in the warehouse. Somehow, I was in a long passageway. Cold air swept through, chilling me to the bone. It felt endless. Ahead, shadows darted, moving out of the periphery of my flashlight. I squinted, trying to see, but the shapes danced away. Then from the shadows I heard a voice. "You shouldn't be here." And at that moment I realized I wasn't alone. I stumbled back instinctively, my heart racing. The voice had a low, gravelly tone. It carried an authority that made me feel small and helpless. I aimed my flashlight towards the figure, desperate to make out any details, but nothing, just shadows. I took a shaky breath and forced myself to speak. "Who are you?" My voice cracked, sounding weaker than I intended. Silence hung in the air again, thick and oppressive. I could hear my own heartbeat, the rapid pulse echoing the urgency of the moment. Then, as if in response, The shadows shifted again. A figure stepped closer, emerging from the darkness. It was difficult to make out clearly, but I could see a man, tall and gaunt. His clothes hung off him like a sack, and his face was pale, almost ghastly in the dim light. A chill ran through me. "You've stumbled into something you don't understand," he said, his voice rising above the silence. I didn't like this. My instincts were screaming at me to run. I didn't mean to intrude. I was just looking for a way out. "Out?" He chuckled, a low, mirthless sound. "There is no exit from this place. Not for you." Before I could react, the air shifted again. I felt it, the density of the atmosphere pressing in on me. I turned, glancing down the passageway, but the darkness seemed thicker there. It felt alive, pulsing like the symbol on the warehouse floor. "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat tightening. "Too late," he replied, shaking his head. He stepped back into the shadows, his form disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. "They'll come for you." I swallowed hard, panic clawing at my insides. Who? What did he mean? I stepped forward, heart racing, straining to see into the darkness where he had been. But then, I heard it again. The thumping. It was closer now, and I could tell it was coming from deeper within the passageway. My gut twisted, but I couldn't just stand there. I had to move. I raised the flashlight, its weak beam flickering with uncertainty. I stepped back into the shadows where the man had just been, hoping against hope he might be right about the escape. That's when the sound changed. It wasn't just a rhythm anymore, it became a syncopated chant, low and menacing. The words didn't register, but the intent behind them felt palpable, a summoning of sorts. I turned on my heel, adrenaline flooding my veins, and ran. Every step echoed unnervingly in the passageway, urgency pressing down as the thumping intensified. I could feel something pursuing me, racing close at my heels, though I dared not look back. Suddenly something blocked my path. I skidded to a stop, nearly crashing into another wall. This one seemed to pulse with a dark energy, just like the symbol had. Panic surged within me. I could feel it. Whatever was behind me was growing closer. And then, without warning, my flashlight went out. In pitch blackness, I stood frozen, breathing heavily, heart pounding in my ears. I was enveloped by silence, followed by an overwhelming dread that something was watching me. I knew I had to find the light. But first, I had to find a way to escape whatever was coming for me. I strained my ears in the darkness, trying to detect any sound that might give me a clue about what was lurking nearby. My instincts screamed for me to run, but I couldn't see where I was going. I felt my way along the wall, fingertips brushing against the cold, rough surface. The chanting had stopped, but the heavy silence was somehow more terrifying. I found myself pressed against another cold wall. Panic clawed at my throat. I needed light. I fumbled for my phone, praying the battery hadn't died. My trembling fingers finally found it. I flicked it on, heart hammering at the thought of what I might see when the screen illuminated. The light was dim, barely cutting through the darkness, but it was enough to reveal my surroundings. The passageway twisted and turned, and the air felt thick with something I couldn't put my finger on. I cast the light around me, desperate for any sign of movement, anything that would explain the unease swelling within me. And that's when I saw it. A dark figure at the far end of the hallway, just beyond the reach of my light. It was hunched low, shrouded in shadow, but I could feel its eyes on me, cold and piercing. Time froze for a second as our gazes locked. My breath caught in my throat. Then it shifted from the wall, a long, spindly arm extending as if beckoning me closer. I stumbled back, fear coursing through me. The thin beam of my phone quivered as I backed away, illuminating faint scratches on the wall, deep, jagged lines like claw marks. My heart raced faster. I turned and dashed down the passageway, ignoring the pain in my legs, every instinct screaming at me to flee. Suddenly the chanting resumed, but now it surrounded me, echoing from all sides. I felt like I was caught in a sickening loop, trapped within a ritual I couldn't comprehend. I focused on my path, adrenaline fueling my desperate flight. Light and darkness danced as I swung the phone frantically, trying to find a way out. Then the ground beneath me shifted. Panic skittered through me as I realized I was heading back the way I'd come, or worse, into a trap. I had to think fast. I turned down a branching path that seemed slightly illuminated, hoping it would lead me away from whatever was pursuing me. I sprinted, praying for anything that resembled an exit. The echoes of my footsteps were drowned out by the deep thudding that had once been behind me, now threatening to close in again. It became a race, not just against the darkness, but against something more sinister than fear. It was the certainty that something wanted to pull me back. Then I noticed a door on my left. It was partially ajar, a faint orange glow spilling out into the hallway. I pelted toward it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. If I could just reach it, maybe I could find safety. As I burst through the door, the warmth surrounded me, but I didn't stop to take it in. I glanced back into the corridor. Whatever was hunting me had paused at the threshold, lingering in the shadows. Relief flooded through me, but the looming threat remained. I couldn't stay in this room forever. The chanting faded, but I knew my moment of reprieve was just that. Temporary. What lay ahead would likely be worse than what I had just escaped. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, tracked as intensely as before. I stepped further into the room, ready to confront whatever challenge lay ahead. The room felt strange, almost too quiet after the chaos I'd escaped. I scanned the space, taking in my surroundings. It was a typical storeroom, dusty shelves stacked haphazardly, crates piled high in random corners, and rusty metal beams crisscrossing the ceiling. Yet something about it was off, like a disconnect between the mundane and the unnerving. I was drawn toward the flickering light spilling from an old lamp in the far corner. It cast unsettling shadows that danced across the walls. As I approached, I could feel my heart pounding again, part fear, part curiosity. What was it that caught my attention? I had to know. I grabbed the lamp, steadying it before me, and turned to look around. My phone was still clutched tightly in my other hand. I took a deep breath, even though I doubted it would do much to calm my nerves. A feeling prickled at the back of my neck. I wasn't alone. All at once the air changed. It grew thicker, charged, and the whispering voices returned, echoing from the shadows surrounding me. I swung the lamp wildly, illuminating areas that cast my own silhouette back at me, making it difficult to discern what was real and what was just a projection of my fear. Then I noticed something on the floor, a large frayed area rug pushed aside, revealing a trap door. Hope surged within me. Maybe it led to safety. My hands were shaking as I knelt beside it. The edges of the door were worn, not recently disturbed. Who had been here? I hesitated, recalling the figure in the hallway. Just as I was about to open it, I heard it. A scraping sound against the wooden surface behind me. Cold dread washed over me. It was the sound of something heavy shifting. I turned slowly, lamp raised high, heart racing. The shadows converged, and I thought I saw a shape forming again, its outline flickering against the light. Desperate and terrified, I pulled at the trap door handle and yanked it open. It creaked loudly, echoing in the silence. I peered inside. It was dark, deeper than I expected. I didn't know what I would find down there, but I couldn't stay in the room any longer. Before I could make a decision, the shadows moved again, now closer. Panic surged through me. I dropped the lamp and scrambled for the trap door, intent on diving in. But just as I reached for the edge, something, a hand, grabbed my wrist. I gasped, twisting in the grip. My blood ran cold as I locked eyes with the dark figure I had seen before. That same cold gaze stared back at me, and its twisted mouth curled into a smile. My heart raced out of control. "Get off me!" I yelled, yanking my arm, but it held fast, pulling me closer as if to join whatever darkness lay beyond. Everything inside me screamed for flight. I managed to wrench my arm free, stumbling back, my legs tangling in a desperate attempt to escape the hold of the night. Then the chanting returned, louder and more insistent, thrumming in my ears. Suddenly the light from the lamp flickered out, leaving me in total darkness. I had to get away, but how? The shadow seemed to close in, the chanting hitting a fever pitch. I peered back at the trap door, my heart pounding. Was this my chance? Just then, I felt a sudden shift in the air. Whatever was slinking in the shadows was not done with me yet. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I reminded myself, there must be a way out. But my instincts warned me, time was running out. I hesitated for a moment, caught between the dark trapdoor that promised escape and the encroaching shadow behind me. My instincts screamed for me to jump into that darkness, but the trapdoor was a leap into the unknown. I could hear the whispering intensify, almost mocking me. Whatever was in the room only grew bolder. Just then a sudden noise erupted from the corner, a loud crash, the shattering of glass. My heart seized. I spun around, fearing the worst, but the darkness was thick and impenetrable. It could have been anything, or anyone. I had to make a choice. I dove for the trapdoor, scrambling down into the cool darkness below. As I landed, I tucked and rolled, stifling a whimper as I brushed against the rough, cold concrete. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to catch my breath. The cacophony of whispers faded slightly overhead, but the dread remained. The dim light from above cast a faint glow through the opening of the trapdoor. My phone vibrated in my pocket, breaking the stillness. I fumbled to pull it out, my hands trembling. I tapped the screen to illuminate the area around me. The faint light revealed a narrow hallway stretching out in front of me, enveloped in shadow. I took a few cautious steps forward, every creak beneath my feet amplifying the tension in the air. The walls closed in, old and damp, as I could feel moisture gathering in the air. A few feet ahead, I noticed a door ajar, swinging slightly as if inviting me in. I reached it cautiously, peering inside. The small room appeared empty, save for a desk cluttered with various discarded items. Photos covered the surface, some fading and others nearly torn off. I stepped closer, heart racing, trying to make sense of what they were. The images were jarring, faces I didn't recognize, all with a panicked look in their eyes. And then, in the far corner, I spotted something that made my blood run cold. One of the photos was a snapshot of the very hallway I had just fled, but from a different angle. The unmistakable figure cloaked in shadows stood brushing against the wall behind a man who looked as terrified as I felt. Suddenly I heard it again, a scraping sound, clearer this time. I turned sharply in the direction of the noise, and just as I did, the door behind me slammed shut with a deafening thud, plunging me into darkness once more. "Please, no," I whispered, panic rising again. I was trapped in a confined space with whatever lurked out there potentially closing in. The chanting began again, low and unsettling, pulling me deeper into its grasp. I needed to find a way out, but with every passing moment the sense of being watched grew stronger. From the corner of my eye, I thought I saw something moving. My heart raced as I prepared to flee, but then a new realization hit me. Whatever followed me hadn't moved on. It was waiting, lurking in the shadows. My breath quickened as I thought of my escape. But who, or what, had followed me into this dark place? I pressed against the desk, heart thumping in my chest. The whispers had shifted. They seemed to flutter around me like a swarm of uneasy insects. My breath quickened as I strained to hear any distinct words, but they only echoed through the dark space, a haunting mix of dread and desperation. Ignoring the oppressive fear, I needed to find a weapon or anything I could use to defend myself. My eyes scanned the room, catching glimpses of items I hoped could be of use. A rusted screwdriver half buried beneath a stack of old papers caught my attention. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my hand. Not much, but better than nothing. As I turned slowly, I caught the light from my phone on something strange. The floor beneath my feet appeared different here, almost as if there was a mist swirling around it. I knelt to investigate, and as I did, the sound of an unseen presence rustling in the shadows sent a chill down my spine. "Stop," I whispered to myself, feeling my hands start to shake again. I had to maintain focus. Whatever was out there was only gaining confidence. Then, through the darkness, I heard a clatter, like something tumbling to the ground. I straightened abruptly, holding the screwdriver tightly. "Who's there?" I called, voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. My heart felt like it was in my throat as I listened intently. Silence answered. Suddenly I remembered the photos on the desk. If they were any indication, I wasn't the first to end up here. There might be a clue, something I could piece together. I hurried back over to the desk, rifling through the images. Most were too distorted to offer more than a fleeting sense of familiarity, but one photo caught my eye. It showed a wide-open area in the warehouse, with ghostly outlines of chairs and tables, all abandoned and lost to time. But what struck me was the date scrawled on the back, a week prior. My stomach twisted. Whoever had been here before had likely experienced the same feeling of dread I'm facing now. That's when I saw it, slowly unraveling at the corner of the image, a shadowy figure almost waving at the edge of the frame. I felt a mix of shock and terror wash over me. It was as if the person who took the photo knew whatever haunted this place was close by, lurking, waiting. The scraping sound returned, closer this time. A cold sweat ran down my back as realization sunk in. The entity wasn't content to merely watch me any longer. It was coming for me. I slipped the photo into my pocket, my instincts screaming at me to move. I darted back to the door, praying it would open. When I reached for the handle, it felt impossibly cold. Taking a deep breath, I twisted it and pushed, nearly falling into the hallway beyond. But just as I made my way into the dim light, I halted. Directly in front of me stood the figure, cloaked in darkness, eyes glinting like shards of glass. My instincts took over. There was no time to second guess. I turned to run. But as I did, the hallway lights flickered and went out completely, plunging me into a darkness thicker than before. Now I didn't just have to escape. I had to survive. I stumbled forward, disoriented in the pitch-black hallway. The only sound was the thundering of my heart and the distant echoes of my breath. I gripped the screwdriver tightly, more for reassurance than for protection. Where had the figure gone? My instincts kicked in. I had to keep moving. I felt my way along the wall, searching for a door or an exit. The cool concrete felt solid beneath my fingers, but panic surged through me as I remembered the whispers. They were closer now, circling around like a predator hunting its prey. Suddenly I bumped into something. My heart raced as I froze, holding my breath. The shape was solid, but I could not see it. "Who's there?" I rasped, my voice barely a whisper. Nothing answered. I leaned in closer, straining to identify the silhouette. My heart dropped when I realized it was just a stack of old crates. I had to keep my mind clear and my thoughts focused. I finally found the end of the wall and turned sharply, hoping for another way out. Then I saw it, a dim red light flickering in the distance. It seemed like a beacon, a promise of safety. I took off toward it, ignoring the creeping dread that urged me to stop. As I moved closer, it became apparent that it wasn't a light at all, but a small panel on the wall that was intermittently flashing as if malfunctioning. I reached out to touch it, hoping it might unlock a door or at least provide a distraction. At that moment, I heard it again. The rustling sound followed by a low hiss that sent ice through my veins. I turned abruptly, my heart pounding as I instinctively raised the screwdriver, ready to stab or defend against whatever crept closer. "Stop!" I yelled, trying to sound brave, but my voice wavered. The air became charged with dread, thickening every passing second. I scanned the darkness, searching for any hint of what was coming. The whispers grew louder, unintelligible yet urgent. I thought I could see shadows shifting, but I might have been imagining things. The red light flickered again, almost in sync with my rising fear. Then, just as I was about to take another step, a figure emerged from the shadows just beyond the reach of the red glow. My surroundings stopped. Everything fell silent. I recognized the outline. It was another person. But as I squinted, the face faded into the murky darkness. "Help me!" I shouted, desperation bleeding into my voice. "Please!" The figure drifted closer and I could finally make out some features, a gaunt face with wide eyes staring straight at me. But then, confusion set in. I didn't know if the person was friend or foe. "Get out!" it rasped, voice cracked and urgent. "You shouldn't be here!" I hesitated, caught between the instinct to run and the growing curiosity of what had happened to them. But before I could ask anything more, the lights flickered again, and at that moment, the figure abruptly vanished, swallowed by the darkness. "What the?" I gasped. I was all alone now, with the whispers swirling and the air thick with terror. My mind raced, searching for answers. Before I could gather my thoughts, I felt the unmistakable sensation of cold fingers brushing against my arm. I jumped and turned, only to be faced with the very thing I feared, a dark figure lurking too close for comfort. This was it. I had to find a way out, and fast. I bolted down the hallway, adrenaline propelling me forward into the encroaching darkness. My only thought was escape, but each hurried step felt like a countdown to my reckoning. Would I reach safety, or would the shadows claim me before I got the chance? I sprinted down the hallway, fueled by pure panic. Every echo of my footsteps was swallowed by the thick air behind me. Whatever had been watching me was closing in. My fingers brushed the cold concrete walls as I barreled forward, but I couldn't seem to find the end of this nightmare. Then, just as a flicker of hope erupted inside me, I spotted another door at the end of the corridor. It stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling through the crack. I lunged toward it, narrowly avoiding a chill that seemed to grip my back. As I reached the door, I pushed it open. Flooded with light from the other side, I hesitated for a split second, heart racing, dismissing the temptation to look back. With a last surge of adrenaline, I plunged through the threshold and stumbled onto what felt like solid ground. To my shock, I found myself outside. Underneath the moonlit sky, the cool night air wrapping around me like a long-lost friend. Gasping, I turned to look back at the warehouse. It loomed behind me, silent and foreboding. But now it was just a building, a mere shell that had held so much horror. My heart raced, but the pounding in my ears began to fade with the whispers. I took a step back, allowing a rush of relief to wash over me. I had made it out. But that relief quickly turned to uncertainty, anxiety creeping back in as I thought of what I had experienced. What had happened in there? What was the figure? I glanced around. The darkness enveloped the warehouse, hiding its secrets. I half expected to see shadows lurking, but I was alone in the empty parking lot. I fumbled for my phone, desperately trying to remind myself that I was free. The screen lit up, illuminating the cold embrace of a still night. No missed calls, no texts, just that hollow void of silence. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement at the edge of the shadows. I squinted, dread flickering through me. I couldn't be sure, but it felt like the warehouse exhaled, a breeze rolling out from its dark mouth. "Get away from there." My voice trembled, but no sound followed. No reply came from the shadows, just an unsettling quiet. A bead of sweat trickled down my brow as I wrestled with my instincts. I turned to leave, feeling the weight of unanswered questions pressing on my chest. Had I escaped for good, or was I merely a moment away from being drawn back in? I fought to shake it off, unwilling to succumb to its lure. As I reached my car, ready to drive away, I remembered the photo I'd tucked into my pocket. I pulled it out, stomach knotting at the shadowy figure lurking at the edge. Its unyielding gaze felt like a promise of more to come. I hesitated before shoving it back, trying to distance myself from whatever malevolent presence I had encountered. Adrenaline surged as I turned the ignition, and the hum of the engine snapped me back to the present. But even as I drove away, glancing back at the warehouse until it faded into the darkness, a question lingered in my mind. Had I truly escaped? Or was the shadow's grip simply biding its time until I returned? I looked at the photo one last time, shuffling through the memories of that terrible night. Shadows or not, I felt them trailing behind me, like whispers in the dark, a reminder that some doors should never be opened. Life returned to normal, but something shifted inside me. Every creak of a floorboard, every whisper of wind, stirred an unsettling reminder of what lay beyond the veil of reality. And just like that, I found myself unsure, haunted by whether I had truly escaped, or if something had come with me into the light.